to do today is I'm going to share my screen, and this talk is very, very much about you as directors of sport and how you can maximise your presence with it. So what we're going to do is we're just going to have a brief look at social media, why it matters, and what's going on, what platforms are people going on, and what are they actually doing when they're on them, and why is it relevant to you as a director of sport in an independent school. And we're then going to look at some specific research that I've done for today's talk. I looked at 100 different independent schools and what social media they had. And I have to say, I was really, really surprised by the results. So I think that will hopefully be useful for you all. So then we're going to go on to look at the key platforms for the sector and give you some tips as to how they can work for you. We'll talk a little bit about content strategy, but it is difficult, obviously, in a short session to cover everything. So hopefully this will give you a good overview, and you can go back to your department, you can speak to your marketing directors, and you can come up with a plan that doesn't involve much of your time, so you can stick to what you do best. And the one thing I probably should have had mentioned when David introduced me is I am married to a PE teacher in an independent school. So I think that is also quite important, because I do have the measure of PE departments, and we have got, I think, Dominic Bradbourne, who's our new director of sport at Asheville, on the call. So I am a bit scared of him as well. But hopefully this will be a good session, and I will crack on now. We'll have some questions at the end, because I think it's always good to share war stories of challenges you might have had with your social media, and also just different approaches that senior leaders can take. And we'll talk about a bit of that before we all get together. So how much time are people spending on social media? Why does it actually matter? Well, there's all kinds of facts and figures out there, but the one thing that they do all consistently seem to come up with is a figure for the UK of around 2 hours. You'll also notice that the Philippines is 4 hours, 1 minute. And I don't know whether those stats are surprising you, or whether you're actually thinking, oh, I would have thought it'd be more. But another way of looking at it is to say that 15% of people's waking time in the UK approximately is spent on social media. And I think that's quite a scary stat, but I think it also shows just how important it is that your social media does reflect, is on point. And what are the world's most used platforms? Well, this is really quite up-to-date research, because obviously, as you can imagine, it changes all the time. And you can see there that Facebook is at the top. Facebook is less popular with the young, but it is still the biggest platform out there. We've got YouTube. I'm not going to talk much about YouTube, and the reason being that I think from a school sports perspective, if you've got content on YouTube, because you can't monitor the adverts that are out there and the videos that come up next, it's probably not something that you need to be looking at. And as Neil said in his talk today, you want short video and you want high quality. So it's much better to have it embedded on your website, I think. So we won't really be looking too much about that. But when I come on to share my research, you can see why I've chosen the platforms that I have chosen. So we can see that people are spending a lot of time online on social media, and they're on lots of different platforms. So, well, why does that matter? Why does that matter to you in your role? Oh, I think no, I thought my screen was frozen, sorry. So what are people doing, and why are they on social media? Well, I think this is quite an interesting slide from your perspective. 57% are on there because they want to learn about new products or services. So this is effectively anything new that you are doing as a department. 47% want to stay up to date on company news. And then the other one, which I think is particularly interesting when we're looking at prospective parents, 32% are doing it because they want to connect with people who are similar to me. So you start to see that if you've got a parent who is on there, who's sharing your stuff, liking your stuff, that is probably also going to be getting into the sphere of other prospective parents that you also want to get in with. So I think this just shows why social media is important and why we can't ignore it as a director of sport. So what do people do once they're following a brand on social media? Well, this is a good question. And there's lots, obviously, you're not an e-commerce site. Nobody's going to follow your brand and buy something. You haven't got anything to sell. But coming back to this idea that with engagement, 71% are engaging with that brand. And, you know, these parents hang around together, not just outside, not just on the side of the sports pitch, but also online. So here, you know, if you've got your parents liking your posts and engaging with what you're doing, then that really is useful. You can also see that 85% will recommend that brand to a family or friend. So again, you can see why it's important to you as a director of sport. If you're trying to get the best pupils, the best families into your school, you want the people who value sport as your parents. Those are your target parents. You want the ones who are going to be nice to you, who are going to be appreciative of what you do. So and those are the people who are going to appreciate good sports content out on social media. So that is why I think it's important to us all, and I hope you're all in agreement, because you've come along to the talk, so that will give me a clue that you are. So now I want to talk specifically about what you can do as directors of sport, marketing directors for your school. So as I said, I carried out some research. I took a sample size of 100. Now I know there's a lot more independent schools than that, but I thought that was a sensible sample size to give some headline figures. And I took 40 from the top 100 school sports magazine. I took a random 40. Now, I know that these rankings are at worst, well, let's not describe the rankings, but I'm just telling you so that you understand where my sample size from. And EduRank is a website that produces the top 100 UK independent schools based on their social media activity. So it's put together by a completely different set of people. So the reason that I went for 40 from each of these is we've got those schools that are perceived as being top of their game at sport, but we've also got those schools who are perceived as being top of their game in terms of their social media presence. And then I added in 20 randomly selected in the hope that this would give you some confidence that when I'm talking, that I am talking generically, but I'm giving some facts and figures which are of interest to you. And from that, I've decided today that we need to focus on 5 key platforms. So these are TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And we'll start with TikTok. I'm not sure how many of you are on TikTok, either personally or as a school. From my research, only 3% of the schools were on TikTok. But we can't ignore TikTok because it is the fastest growing app in the UK, and its biggest users are 18 to 24-year-olds. So maybe not prospective parents quite yet, but they will be. However, there are so many problems and reasons as to why to stay away from TikTok. And that is why you can see that my comment at the bottom is leave for now. And the reason that I think you should leave it is if you have got TikTok on your phone now and you go on and you type in your school, the chances are that you are tagged in all kinds of videos that you don't want to be tagged in. You'll see I've put up there the hashtag private school check. If you go onto that, you'll see hundreds, thousands of videos of children in their school uniform, in their school building, taking the mickey out of themselves for being privileged. Another TikTok account that has a massive following is the Shuffle Gang, which is a group of boys from Gresham's, all wearing their shuffles with some funny songs. I mean, it's really entertaining stuff, but do you as a school want to be associated with it? And I suspect the answer is probably not. So I think really the advice here is just leave it. The reason that I've said for now is because I know how quickly social media changes. So I can imagine that in 2 years' time, we might be looking back on this and going, well, why on earth did they suggest that we didn't use TikTok? You know, we're having fantastic success with it these days. So that's why I've got the question marks there. I think really the comment of the mouse who went second got the cheese. is relevant in this instance, and I would just watch and see what your schools nearby are doing. You know, as Neil said, monitoring those schools that come into your area of consideration rather than ploughing ahead with a TikTok account. You've all got bigger battles to fight, and it's a decision that probably needs to come from the top downwards. The next one, moving on to Facebook, well, you can immediately see that 32% of Facebook users are aged between 25 and 34. So we're getting more into the demographic that is relevant to you as an independent school. And this is obviously generic facts about people accessing it through mobile. But if we come on to look at how it works in terms of the independent schools, 98% of those 100 schools had a Facebook page. And the good news for you on this call as a director of sport is that none of them had a Facebook sports page. So this is really, really good for you because it means that you don't need to be overly worrying about the Facebook presence. That said, I do think it's important that you have a look at your school Facebook page and see what is on there. And the reason that I say this is that if this is being done by your marketing department, you've probably not looked on it. Why would you? You've got better things to do. But you might go on there and find that almost all the content relates to the prep school. Almost all the content relates to music. So if this is somewhere where parents are finding your school or your potential school, that needs to reflect the entire offering of the school. And it's you as the director of sport want your offering to be strongly represented. Now, as a marketing director, it is, I would argue, the marketing director's role to ensure that the Facebook offers everything good about the school in the same way that they have the oversight of the website. But I do think there's a lot to be gained from you as a director of sport to go on and have a look, and then you can have a word with your marketing department and say, well, actually, please, can you make sure you post about sport once a week because you seem to be posting about music once a week. I think if you do that, it's not much work for you, but it makes sure that you're getting represented because there's a lot of parents out there now. You know, Neil talked about websites and about the fact parents visit websites, and he's absolutely spot on. Sort of 10, 15 years ago, the customer journey was you phoned up, you asked for a prospectus, you got your different prospectuses, you spoke to your friends, and then you decided which schools to go and have a look at. We then went into a phase which was called the ghost enquirer, and this is where nobody was asking for a prospectus anymore, and it saved schools a fortune on printing material. And instead, parents are going straight to the website and making decisions based on what they've found on the website. Well, we've now gone, I think, even one step further. Yes, people are looking at the website, but before they go into the website, they're doing some research on social media. And we've seen from those stats, people are spending the best part of 2 hours a day on social media. So they're in Facebook, they're in Twitter, and they start searching for a school that they're vaguely interested in, or the school where their children go, because it's just something to do. So it's really important that you have got a voice on there, even though you don't need a school Facebook page. So then quickly going to move on to LinkedIn, because the two that I'm going to spend most of the time today talking about are Twitter and Instagram. But I think it is worth touching on LinkedIn. I'm sure there's lots of you who have got LinkedIn profiles and you would use it for lots of different reasons. And I would say that it's definitely worth having a LinkedIn profile for you, not least for professional development, networking, job opportunities. And I think pretty much everybody on this call is a member of PADSIS. I'm sure one of the main places where you find out about when the PADSIS meetings and forums are taking place is on LinkedIn. You're not necessarily going onto the PADSIS website and looking for that information. And so I would say, do have your own presence on LinkedIn. It's a really, really good way to network with your fellow professionals. I think if people receive a LinkedIn message, because they receive it when they're in LinkedIn, they're more likely to reply. It's also easier to find them than it is getting through the school secretary to get the email address of the director of sport to send them an email. So I think LinkedIn is definitely worth doing. In terms of your school sport, every school, so that all 100 schools had a LinkedIn page for the school. And that is as you would expect, because lots of people put that they're an alumni of. And the content on these LinkedIn pages for the school varied massively. Some had absolutely nothing, just got the page so that people could put that they went to that school. Others constantly posting news, others using it more like a promotional site, like a website. So again, you can have a look and see what your school's LinkedIn site is doing and make a decision as to whether you think there's worth having something on there from a sports perspective. But really, I think using it to shout about things you've done in your department on LinkedIn is really useful. Not necessarily for you, other than obviously you're able to be proud of what you've done and shout about it, but it's useful for other people because it's good to see what other people are doing. And therefore, I really would recommend that you all get on. The main platform today, well, two, Twitter and Instagram, are the ones that I want to talk to you about. All 100 of the 100 schools had a Twitter feed, as you might expect. 92% of them had a school sports Twitter feed. Again, that's probably, for you as the audience that you are, what you would have expected, and those statistics don't come as a surprise to you. So I want to look a little at how we keep your sports Twitter feed live and relevant. Perhaps more interesting, when I did this research, was looking at what else was out there. And I looked at each school, and I wasn't looking at, say, if you were ahead and you said that you were ahead of X school. I was looking at Twitter feeds which included the school name, and there was hundreds. One school had 17 different Twitter feeds with its school name in. And so I think that's a really important point, because it's all very well getting all excited and setting yourself up with a Twitter feed, but if you're not going to keep it up to date, then the chances are it's doing more harm than good. If I just give you an example in the context of hockey, there's a school that had a fantastic hockey feed, obviously a very enthusiastic head of hockey, posting on every session, posting lots of different tips. Brilliant. They've obviously left and gone to another school. That hockey Twitter feed is still there, but nothing has happened on it for about 18 months. Now, you could say, why does that matter? But if you come back to being the current parent or the prospective parent, and you're on Twitter and you search for the school, to see that the school has a hockey feed that used to be really good but hasn't posted anything for 18 months, immediately makes you think, well, hockey must have gone down the pan at that school. And of course, that won't be the case. It will be that the enthusiastic head of hockey is no longer there, and the new one isn't into using the Twitter account. They may not even have the details to log on to the Twitter account. So what I would say is make sure that if your PE department has got any subject, a hockey feed or a rugby feed or a netball feed, make sure that you've got the password for it, and make sure that the marketing department has got the password for it, so that if somebody does leave, it's not one of those things that you're having to remember to do, and somebody can take it over or take it down. You know, I think it's interesting that the majority of schools do have a separate sports feed. The ones that don't, I imagine it comes from a marketing department that's very strict about what people are allowed to do online in relation to their school. So if you're on this as a director of sport, looking at your Twitter feed, do have a look and see which other ones are out there, and have a think. Do you need them all? Would it not be easier to rationalize them all into one place? And I think this is particularly of interest now when we come on to look at how we make our Twitter feed good for our audience. Obviously, the less feeds you've got, the easier it will be. So how do we achieve a really good Twitter feed that makes people want to come to the school, that makes them proud of the school. It makes them like posts, which are all the things that we're aiming for. And also, if you're doing lots of good things in your school, you should be embracing the likes of Twitter, because it's a chance for you to shout about what you do. You know, I'm sure some of you will remember the old days of the email newsletter, and each week you'd get a match report from every team. Well, that was a pain to write and not really that interesting. You know, Neil showed us the chart of people, whether they won or lost a match. It's just not very interesting, and it actually takes a bit of time to do. Whereas here with Twitter, we can have quick photos, we can have quick posts, so you can let people know lots and lots of different things that you've got going on without much effort. So how do we achieve a good feed? Well, this could be a whole half-day workshop in itself, but what I'm going to do is just quickly talk about content strategy. And content strategy is a word that digital marketers use all the time. And frankly, I think it's just an excuse to put their prices up. What we're looking at is, what do people want to see on our feed? And you are all well placed in your roles to know exactly what people want to see, because you know your audience better than any other department in your entire school. You know, the head of chemistry has never been subjected to being interrupted in their lesson by somebody with a PhD in chemistry. But we've all seen those parents who, you know, perhaps had some sporting success at a younger age, and they decide that they should start chipping in as to how you run your team at a fixture or a tournament. So, you know, whilst that's the downside, it does mean you know your customers better than anyone else in the school, I would argue. And the second thing we want to look at is design. You know, directors of sport are not designers, and your marketing department probably aren't designers, but they will have access. So we want to look at how you can work together to to make sure you've got a really good feed, but without it taking up lots and lots of your time. And so I will touch on the use of scheduling tools for that as well. So before we start as to what content we're going to put up there, it's useful to know what content do people engage with and what do they want. And again, I think this is great for you. Images, well, fantastic. As Neil said, we don't want lots of pictures of the grass or the fancy rowing machine, but you do have access to lots of smiley, happy children on a regular basis. So it's quite an easy win. A lovely photo of a child looking exhausted but happy after a run is always going to be more well received than a photo of somebody sat writing an essay. So these are the type of content that consumers want to engage with. UGC stands for user generated content, not something that I think we need to look at as schools, because the last thing we want is we'd rather our children didn't tag us or post us, because we don't want to have to oversee that and want to leave them to it, really. The other one is Q&As or AMAs, which stands for Ask Me Anything. And this could, if you wanted, be a novel way of trying out the alternative to a sort of presentation evening or a session. You could just say, right, we're going to have a Q&A about the tour we've got planned. And you could just run that on Twitter if you wanted to. I'm not saying you should, I'm just putting it out there as things that some schools have done, and it might be worth a try. The one thing is, obviously, is that if you are online live, you are opening yourself up to all kinds of parents asking all kinds of specific questions. So it can be, personally, I would think you're best off shying away from it, but I think it's worth mentioning because some people have done it and done so successfully. So moving on to our Twitter feed and how to make the best of it. Well, the best thing is to have a social media calendar where you've got your posts scheduled in there. And you're probably listening to this thinking, well, that's fine for her sat there who doesn't have 8 children who are about to come out onto a field, plus I've got all my COVID bubbles, etc. I just haven't got the time. And what I'm hoping to do with this talk is show you how you can do it quickly using some of the tools that are out there so that you can crack on with the day job. And you need a mixture of content. So just to be going back to basics, really, obviously you can drill down and do things more specific your school and your audience. But if we just look broadly at the topics of topical, motivational, promotional, and informational, and the idea is that you want a Twitter feed that is covering all of these, rather than, and you'll have seen it yourself if you're on Twitter, there's probably some companies that you've unfollowed because it's just constant promotion about this, that, and the other, and it's boring. People don't want to engage with it. So on the theme of topical, there's lots of days out there that you can do a nice, easy post. It's a very, very easy win. There's a link there which will take you through to a calendar which has got them for the year. I mean, there's some absolutely ridiculous days there that some might be particularly relevant to your school, or you might want to have fun with it. If it's National Pie Day, you might want to have a picture of one of your members of staff eating a pie. It's entirely your choice. But the point is that there's enough days out there for you to put one in a week, which enables you to have some content scheduled in so that you are not thinking every day, I need to post something today. If you've got content scheduled in, and Twitter then isn't a bind for you. You know that things are going on to the Twitter feed regularly so that it's relevant and active, and then you and your department can add in with extras as and when, and you're not needing to worry about the fact you haven't done it for 3 days or you've done 5 posts today. You've got that generic content going out, so we're sort of building blocks around it. And here you can see, how you can do it. And Cota Small School, they are very good at every occasion. They always do a simple little post, Happy Easter. And I mean, it's really, really simple stuff. And I'll talk to you quickly about how you can do it, or get your marketing department to do it for you. If they schedule in all the main things for half a term, that then frees you up to put the real life active things in there. Now, you might be thinking, well, why do we want that? Why do we want to say Happy Easter? And well, the reason we want to do it is we just want to remind people that we're there, and we want to keep current. So the fact you've said Happy Easter rather than not tweet for 2 weeks, it's just showing that it keeps the presence there. It's useful. And coming on to motivational quotes, there's a couple of links there that will take you through to hundreds of quotes. And this is a really, really easy win in terms of sports. Everybody loves a good quotation, a good motivational quote. And if you schedule in one a week, so many of them are based around sport, it's quite an easy job. All you need to do is have them so that they look relevant to your school. So you can see that the one on the left is Integer Football Club. Integer Football offers elite football training, and they have quote of the day, just really to keep the content up there, to remind people that they exist. So if somebody makes you a template, it should be really easy for you to get those up there, or get your marketing department to do it. Go to them and say, right, we're busy, we're going to tweet, we're proud of everything we do. Can you schedule in some standard stuff for us? This is what I was thinking. And it's easy, they should be able to do it pretty quickly once you've got your head around what you're trying to do. The next thing is moving on to informational, and this again sort of mirrors what Neil was saying when he had some good stats up there from schools. So this is a really easy post. You've got lots of things to shout about. It's a good chance to tell the prospective parents, tell the current parents just what you've achieved. Lots of things going on. You need to shout about it. And during the pandemic, I refer back to Ashfield College, and I know Dom's on, but they did so much for the children from a sports perspective. Loads of different challenges, climbing up steps. Could you climb steps to the height of the gherkin? Strava Art, they did Q&As with professional sports people, they did after-school hockey, which was being done in bedrooms. Now, would you know that from the Twitter feed? And the answer is no, you wouldn't. So this is an opportunity for you to really shout about what you've got going on. And again, it should be easy to do. The other one is quotes. I'm sure you've all got lots and lots of lovely quotes from parents who've said, thank you so much. And get your marketing department to make those up into 6 different posts. That's half a term, 1 a week. And if you're a prospective parent, it's coming back to what Neil was saying about the lottery. It's a chance to be get a bit more emotion in there. And you know, most parents will happily give you a good quote. If they're happy, they like the idea, and you don't need to name them. If you can name them, great. But again, just start thinking how actually, if you've got that in there once a week, it just frees you and your team up to do the things that you want to do, which is, you know, engaging the children in playing sport. So I did mention about the fact content is difficult, and I do understand that as a director of sport, the last thing you want to be doing is making content for content's sake. So the easy way around it is to work with your marketing department. If you've got a graduate assistant, it's a task that you could give to them, but it shouldn't be taking more than a half a day to get these tweets scheduled in. And then that frees up your time to do the extra things as and when, and it can be very, very reactive. And this is quite a useful slide just for those, if you are struggling for ideas, and there's different ways of doing it. I mean, let's be honest, 5 of these are the same. They're effectively an opportunity to post old pictures. So again, this isn't something that you need to be doing as a director of sport, boots on the ground, but your marketing department will have, you know, access to all your archives. So you could say to them, right, actually, can you do me a Throwback Thursday post every week and use something from the archives? And people like that. Okay, they don't want it every day, but again, it just keeps it varied. The other thing to think about is how you want your Twitter account to be ran. If we're working on the premise that you have got a sports Twitter account, there's lots of different approaches people have in terms of who they let tweet and who they don't let tweet. And I have a strong view on this. My view is that if you trust somebody to speak on a one-to-one to a child, and you trust them to have a conversation with a parent, then you should be trusting them to be able to put a tweet up. And it might be that you want to run a session on the kind of things you want them to put up, or it might be that you're worried they're going to start tweeting all the time, and you want to say, well, actually, we'll split this up between the department. Monday's your day, Tuesday's your day. That's a choice for you. But as a director of sport, your marketing department can schedule in your regular content, and then you can use your team to get the rest of the content in, so that hopefully this shouldn't be taking up much of your time at all. And if you feel that it is taking up quite a lot of your time, then think back, and if you can't think back because you're too young, go and speak to somebody who had to do a match report for every single week back in the day when email newsletters were seen the way forward. I mean, that must have been painful for people. So how do you do this? Well, hopefully you've got a friendly marketing department who are going to do it for you. That's the best solution. If you've not got a friendly marketing department, notice that I use the word friendly because I'm aware that you all will have a marketing department, then hopefully you might have a sports graduate who you could get to do this, because it shouldn't take them very long. If you've not got either of those and you're having to do it yourself, then don't worry, it still isn't that larger task. If you go on to TweetDeck, you are able to sync that with your Twitter account, and you can go in and put your tweet in there and just schedule it. And it's really, really easy. A calendar pops up, so you could just schedule it for next Friday, the Friday after. So it should be a job that, if you use a scheduling tool, you can do really, really quickly. And I would say that for you as directors of sport, independent schools, TweetDeck is the best one to use, because it just does Twitter and it's really, really simple. You see that I've put up quite a few other ones there. They enable you to tweet across lots of different platforms, but as we've seen from our research, that's not necessarily relevant for you in terms of your sport and keeping your sports social media. So design tools as well. Again, hopefully, your marketing director is going to get you some nice little designs, but if they can't, then I would really recommend Canva. On a free account, you can go on there, you can put that you want a Twitter post, and it will do it to the right sizing, and you can just do your post. So it's another really easy way to do the posts. I have included this slide just so that you've got it for reference afterwards of the different sizes for the different photos. And I don't see that this really should be your problem. I am hoping that the marketing department will be doing that generic, and most of what you will be doing, you will be taking in-app live, so therefore it will automatically be the correct size. But I do think this is quite useful, because if you do find yourself posting an old picture, you do want to make sure that it looks right. And there is a school that is known amongst marketers as the Anne Boleyn school, because every post they put up chops off the person's head. And so it's really simple things that you want to get right. So now I want to move on to Instagram. To me, this is really, really interesting, and I'm hoping that A, there's still quite a lot of you on the call, and B, that you'd be prepared to unmic yourselves and give me some guesses on this one. So these are just some generic stats about Instagram. You can see that the average Instagram user spends 53 minutes a day on Instagram, which I thought was much higher than I would have expected. But probably perhaps more interesting is the fact that 71% of businesses are using Instagram. So perhaps when Instagram first came out, people saw it as something for fun, but as ever, the brands have started to muscle their way in. And if we remember, Twitter first started in 2006. Now, I remember setting up a Twitter account for the sports department in 2011. And my goodness, we thought we were special. We thought we were so advanced and out there. And Instagram didn't start till 2010. So yes, it's a different service, but it's also 4 years behind. TikTok's obviously much newer. So again, that could be why we've not got the TikTok account. But as I say, my research was on these 100 schools. So I was just wondering if anyone would like, if everyone could sort of just either put it in the chat or unmic themselves, just hazard a guess at what percentage of schools do you think have an Instagram account? Shall I pick on somebody? Neil, are you there? Shall I pick on you? Oh, he's hiding. Has anyone got, would anyone like to have a guess at what they, what percentage of schools they think have an Instagram feed for their school?
35.
Sorry, can you say that again?
35.
35. Okay, thanks, Dom. Neil, what would you? Oh,
sorry. I was battling in response to your inquiry to unmute and whatever myself. I would have thought more than that. I'm going 75.
75. Okay.
Position of utter ignorance.
Excellent. Does anybody else like to hazard a guess?
On the chat, Alicia, we're ranging from 48 to 65%. 48 to 65%. Okay, thank you. Thank you everybody for doing that. And the actual answer was 93%. So it was much higher than I expected. And from what you've all said, it's much higher than you all expected.
Would it be wrong to point out that I was the winner?
No, not. Well, you were going to be, weren't you, Neil?
I thought we were just looking at official sports, which is 30%, Alicia. So I was close. Sorry, I misheard that.
Tom.
Oh my gosh, you like
Tom,
small
you didn't
children.
win. You were
Who's the
bottom.
best?
Accepted.
Okay, well done, Neil and Dominic. You can be our winners. So you can see 93% of schools have an official Instagram, and Dom was near enough right with 30% having an official sports account. Now, what's interesting with this, I think, is the difference between that 30 and 93. If you go onto Instagram, you can see when accounts started, and you will see that the sports Instagram accounts have all started. They normally start a good 6 months after the school account as a general rule. You can also see that team sports are up there at 22%. Now, there's a huge overlap between the schools that have got a sports account who've then got an individual team sport account. And that is as you would expect, because, you know, if you're sat down as a department and you say, right, let's have a sports account, and chances are somebody will say, oh, well, I want a netball one, I want a rugby one. So you can start to see exactly how it happens. But I think the thing that is interesting with this is it just shows how much Instagram is on the rise. I would say that we are where we are with Instagram, where we were with Twitter a good 5 years ago. So I want to focus quite a bit on Instagram because I think for you as an audience, this is probably the area where there's the most work to be done and the most opportunity. And unlike the Twitter, if we get this right from the start, you're not going to have the job of having to get rid of old Twitter accounts that are no longer relevant. So a good starting point is 3 very simple questions. What are you trying to achieve? Who's going to control it, and how are you going to post? So starting with the first one about what are you trying to achieve? Well, we're trying to achieve exactly what Neil said we're trying to achieve with the website. You know, we're trying to showcase everything that you do and enthuse parents about the sport offering at your school. So obviously we need, exactly like we do for all the other platforms and for our website, a lot of varied, emotive, exciting content. I think the key with Instagram that's worth noticing, it's the only platform that has both parents and students on it. We recently got a new headmistress for our school, and my daughter found out about that via Instagram, which I thought was quite interesting. So that is, in a way, you can say this is the best platform because it enables you to hit the children and the parents, but I think that is just worth bearing in mind. And the question of who's going to control it, well, this is a bit like the question of Twitter, and exactly the same thing stands. And again, I would argue that, you know, the more the merrier, really. Now, how are you going to post? This is a good one for you to have a think about, because there's different ways that you can choose to do it. Sorry, I'm trying to find the right side. This is the one that I want. So you can either have your own school highlights on your own school account, or you could have a sports department account, or you could have a team sport account. So just got a couple of screenshots up there. It's quite difficult to go through into the details of Instagram when we're sort of online and screen sharing, but I'm going to do my best. So why have I described these 3 different accounts, and what actually is the difference? Well, if we take the Radley College screenshot, you can see there that this is the main Radley page. You can then immediately see, put yourself in the shoes of a prospective parent, you can immediately see, oh, music, drama, charities, art. Where is the sport? Now, there's a post there of some people rowing, but that to me is sort of, it's blindingly obvious, it's standing out. Why is there no sport? So again, a bit like the Facebook, if your school has got an Instagram feed, go and have a look and say, oh, excuse me, could we have a highlights for sport? Why are we missing out? And it might be that you decide you don't want a sports department Instagram account. You've got too much going on, you can't be bothered. Well, that's absolutely fine, but at least try and make sure you've got a presence on the main site so that you are getting your voice out there. And if we look across to Millfield Netball account, their account, that whoever runs it is obviously really enthusiastic with Instagram, really on it, and they have all different kinds of things on there. And the reason that I want to talk about them is you can see, I think what they've done is quite clever. They've got good news, they've got training, strength and conditioning, trips. So if we start to look forward to hopefully the world opening up and people having sports tours, Instagram, I think, could be absolutely fantastic for all of you out there. And the reason being, because we're going to look at the story feature. So the story feature, for those of you who don't know, and apologies to those of you who are a bit bored by this stays there for 24 hours. So the great thing about it is that it doesn't clog up the rest of your feed. So you can see there, if we look at the Radley, those are posts. Those pictures at the bottom are posts that stay there permanently. So it's very easy to get some posts up there. You can do a post of every single sport if you wanted, and they can stay there permanently. You're then able to do these highlight reels. So I'm sure all of you will have seen some sports schools' Twitter feeds where a couple of years ago, you'd go on and 6 times a day, there were tweets from the rugby tour. And I understand that parents want to see the rugby tour. I understand that the rugby tour is fantastic and you want to share everything you're doing. And what it does mean is that quite often for the rest of the summer, if you go onto Twitter to that account, all you can see is the rugby tour. You have to really go down to find out anything else about the school and the ethos of their sports department. So if you're using Instagram, you can be putting all of this on your stories, which then means it can appear in one of these circles, and it's not clogging up your main pictures, which can continue to sort of give a good overview of your school. So just looking quickly at Instagram, I think, again, this is quite difficult to do this when you've got obviously different abilities within the audience in terms of your Instagram usage. I have put a link in to a quick guide. There's loads of guides out there, but I've got one which I think is absolutely brilliant for just explaining it clearly of how to use Instagram if you've never used it before. And the other alternative is find yourself a friendly teenager. They'll be able to show you in 5 minutes flat. So the main thing to talk about really is when you log on and see somebody's profile, you have the posts, and that's that black grid there. And here, these are the posts that stay on permanently. So this is where, flipping back to the Radley one, you can see those 6 pictures there. So this is where you would want, if you've gone down the route of a sports page, you want to have different sports on there, as Neil referred to. And you've then got the second button along, which is Reels, and these are 15-second videos. I wouldn't overly worry about these at the moment. Reels were set up quite recently by Instagram, and I think they were set up as a defense to TikTok. But the reality is that the Instagram audience is more mature, and people are using Instagram for the pictures, for the stories, not for the Reels. So if the Reels haven't hit off like people expected. And then the other thing to talk about is the tags. So the button on the right-hand side shows posts that, in this instance, Julie Keys, the educational coach, has been tagged in. So if you are setting up your account, whether you're going to do it for the sport or for the sports department or for the individual hockey, rugby, etc., please do make sure that you go into your privacy and you make sure that your tags are changed from everyone so that other people can't tag you. And the reason that I say this is, again, if after this you would spend 10 minutes looking at different schools, you will find some absolute clangers out there of things that schools are tagged in that they definitely don't want to be tagged in. Now, that's not your problem, that's the marketing department's problem, but it's quite nice for you to not be involved in that at a future date or get the blame if it's the sports department that's been tagged. So do go in there and make sure that you've got that privacy setting. And then just coming back to stories, because I really do believe that they are going to be the way forward for tours going forward. So this is the other good thing about the story is you just take the photo instantly and post it, and there it is. And there's also lots of functionality within the story feature for you to do a quick caption about, lovely sunny day today at the under-12s hockey, or, great fixture, what a 6 at the cricket, without just being boring, putting the results on. And, and just think of it, you're not having to do a match report. It's much better. And the one thing I would say when you've got your account is to look at your stories in the settings and make sure that you've got this save to archive button ticked. And the reason that I say that is that if you've got it saved to archive, you can then add it to your highlights. So if you've got lots of people posting, you've got a whole rugby tour, if they're all saved to the archive, when you come back, you can streamline it and go, right, let's have a highlight circle where we've got all the photos from our rugby tour. We've got all the photos from our netball tour and a netball one. And it's a really nice way to showcase everything that you've got on offer. So I realised that I was speaking incredibly fast talking about Instagram, but as I say, I'm conscious of the different abilities on the call when it comes to social media platforms, because when you're talking to a director of sports audience, it's not part of your remit to be a social media expert or even to be engaged in social media. That said, it is important because it can have a huge impact on the kind of children and parents that come to your school. So in a nutshell, for Instagram, stories are very easy to do and you can add them to your highlights. So I really would recommend them. And hashtags can help increase your profile. So if you want to start putting hashtag school sport, hashtag cricket, schools cricket, you will see that people who are interested in schools cricket will search under that tab, and it will bring up your hashtag. So that is something that you can consider. I'm not suggesting that you do that, but it's just something to bear in mind and know that's there. I also think it's a good idea to tag your location. The reason being, if you're in a day school, then most of your parents live pretty locally. So if they're searching under a certain town, it's nice to have your school popping up, because it just makes you part of that community. You know, you all see your school as being an important part of your local community. Well, this is your local community online. And then just to reiterate, as I said, switch off the ability for people to tab or mention you. So that really is it for me. I finished 5 minutes early, which is probably because I was talking too fast, but I really would like to take questions. And if anybody sort of like to say their views, or they've got any queries, I think it could be useful. Maybe hopefully there's some of you who are on here ever say, well, actually we did it and this worked for us, this didn't, because obviously the best way to learn is from other people's experience. So